Hello, my name is Courtney Rooks, and today I will be presenting on the FDA stance on acetaminophen and autism, regulatory challenges, scientific evidence, and policy implementation. In this presentation, I will cover four main areas. First, I will explain the background and history of acetaminophen use. Second, I will summarize how concerns about autism was developed. Third, I will describe the actions and decisions taken by the FDA. And finally, I will share my evaluation on whether the FDA handled the issue appropriately and what I would have done differently, followed by the conclusion. Acetaminophen has been used for more than 50 years as a pain reliever and fever reducer. It is sold over the counter in many countries and is frequently used to treat headaches, muscle pain, fever, and minor aches. In pregnancy, acetaminophen has been widely recommended because alternatives like ibuprofen and aspirin can cause complications, especially later in pregnancies. Because of this long-standing trust and widespread use, even a small potential safety signal has major public health implications. Scientific concerns began to appear in the early 2000s and increased over the past decade. Several observational studies reported a possible association between prenatal acetaminophen exposure and higher rates of autism spectrum disorder and ADHD. However, these types of studies have important limitations. They rely heavily on self-reported medication use, which can be inaccurate, and they cannot fully separate the effects of the drug from the effects of the fever, infection, or genetic risk factors. When evaluating these studies, it is important to understand the difference between association and causation. An association means two things appear together, but it does not prove that one causes the other. Many studies found weak statistical associations. However, stronger study designs, such as sibling comparison studies, often showed that the association disappeared once family and genetic factors were controlled for it. There are no randomized controlled trials in pregnant populations because that would be unethical. As a result, the scientific evidence remains mixed and highly debatable. In 2022, a formal citizen petition was submitted to the FDA. The petition asked the FDA to require warning labels linked to acetaminophen to autism and ADHD, and to change how the drug is labeled for use during pregnancies. This petition forced the FDA to conduct a full scientific and regulatory review and publicly explain its position. After reviewing the scientific evidence, the FDA denied the petition. The agency concluded that the existing data did not support a causal relationship between acetaminophen and autism. The FDA cited major weaknesses in the studies, included confounding by indication, meaning that the fever or infection may have been the true cause of risk rather than the medication itself. The FDA also emphasizes problems like recall biases and inconsistent measurements of exposure. Based on this, the FDA decided that the warning labels are not scientifically justified. The FDA chose a cautious and conservative regulatory strategy. Instead of changing labels, the agency decided to continue monitoring ongoing research and post-market safety data. This approach was influenced by concerns that strong warnings could lead to pregnant patients to treating fevers, which is known to cause harm to fetal development. The FDA prioritized avoiding unintentional negative public health concerns. This created a difficult public health dilemma. If the FDA warned the public too strongly, people might avoid using acetaminophen. That could lead to untreated fevers, which can be dangerous in pregnancies. The FDA had to weigh potential unproven risk against known proven harm. partially agree with what the FDA approach. From a scientific perspective, I agree that the current evidence does not meet the standard needed to prove causation or to justify strong warning labels. However, I believe the FDA could have done more to be more transparent. Specifically, I think the FDA could have communicated more clearly that scientific uncertainty still exists and that the research is ongoing. If I were responsible for the regulatory decision, I would have not added autism warnings at this time. However, I would have issued stronger professional guidance to healthcare providers. Guidance would encourage using the lowest effective dose for the shortest duration in pregnancies and promote informed decision making between the patient and the provider. I will also prioritize funding for large, high quality prospective studies and a better exposure measurement technologies. The FDA continues to monitor new scientific evidence. They have formally denied the petition, but have stated that they are willing to open or to revisit the issue if stronger data becomes available. They are actively reviewing new studies as they are being published. This case highlights broader challenges the FDA faces when regulating widely used medication under scientific uncertainty. It demonstrates how difficult it is to respond to public concerns without overreacting to weak evidence. It also shows how critical, clear, balanced risk communication is for maintaining public trust. And in conclusion, there is no proven cause link between acetaminophen and autism. The FDA approach was largely appropriate given the scientific uncertainty. However, improved communication and stronger precautionary guides could have strengthened public confidence. This case demonstrates the complexity of modern FDA decision making when science, public concern, and ethics intersect. These are the key scientific and regulatory sources that I used for this presentation. Thank you for your time and your attention.